All right, so let's cut the crap and dive right into this Chris Hadfield dude. We got his Wikipedia page open here, and let me tell you, this guy's done more in one life than most of us could dream of in 10. We're talking like from cornfields to commanding the goddamn International Space Station.
Yeah, it's almost like he engineered his life to be as extraordinary as possible.
Yeah.
It's not just luck, it's like this deliberate pursuit of pushing boundaries. You see that from a very young age.
Yeah, 9 years old, watches the Apollo 11 landing, and boom, he's obsessed with space. But he doesn't just dream about it, he freaking attacks it. Joins the Wolf Cubs, then Air Cadets, learns to fly. The guy was laser focused on getting to space.
And it's not just about space, It's about mastering whatever challenge he sets his mind to. Take his military career, for example. He doesn't just become a pilot, he becomes a goddamn Top Gun fighter jock, flying CF-18s, intercepting Soviet bombers in the Arctic Circle, ice water in his veins.
Hold up, CF-18s. What the hell are those? Some kind of Canadian knockoff F-18.
Exactly. The CF-18 Hornet is essentially Canada's version of the American FA-18 fighter jet. They're pretty badass machines, capable of pulling some insane high angle of attack maneuvers. Hadfield was actually involved in research on those, pushing the limits of what those jets could do.
High angle of attack. Sounds like some kind of kinky shit. Explain it to me like I'm a 5-year-old, but with a dirty mind.
All right, so imagine a plane flying straight and level. The angle of attack is the angle between the wing and the oncoming air. Now crank that angle up, way up, and you've got high angle of attack. It's basically how steep the plane is pointing upwards compared to the direction it's actually moving. Fighter pilots use it for crazy maneuvers, dodging missiles, that kind of thing. Pretty intense stuff.
So this Hadfield dude was basically a test pilot, pushing these fighter jets to their limits. No wonder he ended up in space.
And get this, he didn't just fly for the Canadians. He was an exchange officer with the U.S. Navy, flew F-18s at the Naval Air Test Center in Maryland, even did research at NASA's Dryden Flight Research Center on those high angle of attack maneuvers. The guy was racking up experience like he was going out of style.
Sounds like he was prepping for space the whole time. But why the hell would NASA want a Canadian flyboy messing around with their fancy jets?
Well, first of all, Hatfield's a brilliant engineer. He earned a master's degree in aviation systems from the University of Tennessee while he was on exchange with the U.S. Navy. NASA recognized his talent and expertise, and they weren't about to let national borders get in the way of progress.
So he's smart as hell, a total badass in the cockpit, and ambitious as fuck. What's next in this crazy story?
Next, he gets selected to be one of the first Canadian astronauts in 1992. But even then, he doesn't just sit around waiting for his turn to launch. He takes on all sorts of roles at NASA, Capcom Chief of Robotics, even Director of Operations for NASA at the Cosmonaut Training Center in Star City, Russia.
Hold the phone, Russia. What the hell was a Canadian astronaut doing hanging out with the Ruskies?
This was the early 2000s, remember? The Cold War was over, and the International Space Station was becoming a reality. It was a time of unprecedented international collaboration in space. And Hadfield was right in the thick of it.
So he was basically a space diplomat, smoothing things over between the Americans and the Russians. Did he learn to speak Russian, eat borscht, do that crazy squatting dance they do?
He did learn Russian, fluently in fact, and I'm sure he had a few shots of vodka with the cosmonauts. But his main job was overseeing all NASA operations at Star City, which meant making sure the American astronauts training there were prepared for their missions to the ISS.
That sounds like a pretty crucial role. I mean, these guys are basically learning to fly Russian spacecraft. One wrong move and boom.
Exactly. It was a high-pressure job requiring diplomacy, technical expertise, and a deep understanding of both American and Russian space programs. But Hadfield thrived in that environment. He was a natural leader, able to build bridges and solve problems under pressure.
All right, so he's a fighter pilot, an engineer, a Russian-speaking space diplomat. The guy is like a real-life superhero. But did he actually make it to space? Or was he just prepping everyone else for the big show?
Oh, he made it to space all right. 3 times, in fact. His first mission was in 1995 aboard the Space Shuttle Atlantis. They flew up to the Russian space station, Mir delivered supplies, did some experiments, the whole 9 yards.
So he finally achieved his childhood dream, from watching Apollo 11 on a corn farm to floating around in space. That's got to be a hell of a feeling. Did he freak out? Did he cry? Did he shit his pants in zero gravity?
I doubt he shit his pants, though I guess anything is possible in space. But yeah, he was definitely psyched. He even took a Canadian flag up with him, the one that had flown over Parliament Hill in Ottawa. A little bit of Canadiana in orbit.
That's pretty patriotic for a guy who was hanging out with the Russians.
Oh!
So what about his other 2 space trips? What did he do up there besides floating around and eating astronaut ice cream?
His second mission was a big one, STS-100 in 2001. They flew up to the International Space Station, and one of their main tasks was installing the Canadarm2.
Canadarm2. Is that like the sequel to the first Canadarm? Did it have lasers and shit?
No lasers, unfortunately, but it was a pretty impressive piece of technology. The Canadarm2 is a robotic arm much bigger and more advanced than the original Canadarm. It's basically the workhorse of the ISS, used for moving cargo, assisting astronauts during spacewalks, and all sorts of other tasks.
So this Canadian dude helped install the Canadian arm on the space station. That's some next-level national pride right there.
Yeah.
Did he get to ride around on it? Do a little space ballet with the Canadarm2?
I don't think he rode on it, but he did play a key role in installing it. And get this, during one of the spacewalks, his visor fogged up so badly he could barely see. He had to vent some of the oxygen from his suit into space to clear it up. Talk about thinking on your feet.
Shit, that sounds terrifying. Imagine being stuck outside the space station, your visor all fogged up and you're basically blind. I'd probably just panic and start screaming for my mommy.
He didn't panic. He calmly assessed the situation, figured out a solution, and saved the day. That's the kind of astronaut you want up there. Cool, under pressure, resourceful, and able to MacGyver his way out of a sticky situation.
MacGyver in space?
Yeah.
That's a show I'd watch.
Right.
But wait, you said he went to space 3 times, right?
What about the third trip? His third and final mission was in 2012. He launched aboard a Russian Soyuz spacecraft and spent 5 months on the ISS as commander of Expedition 35.
So he was basically the captain of the space station. Did he get to wear a cool hat and bark orders at everyone?
He didn't wear a captain's hat, but he was responsible for the safety and well-being of everyone on board. He oversaw all aspects of the mission, from conducting scientific experiments to maintaining the station's systems. It was a huge responsibility, and he handled it with his usual blend of competence and humor.
Humor. So this guy wasn't just a brilliant astronaut and a fearless pilot. He was also a funny dude. Did he do stand-up routines in the space station? Tell knock-knock jokes to the Russians?
He wasn't exactly doing stand-up, but he had a knack for connecting with people, both on Earth and in space. And he did have a great sense of humor. He understood that even in the midst of serious scientific work, it was important to have fun and not take yourself too seriously.
All right, so he's smart, brave, funny, and a natural leader. Is there anything this guy can't do? Did he play the banjo too? Compose symphonies in zero gravity?
He didn't play the banjo, but he did play the guitar. In fact, he became quite famous for his musical performances on the ISS. He even recorded an album up there, Space Sessions, Songs from a Tin Can. Pretty fitting title, don't you think?
Hold the fuck up. He recorded an album in space. Was he singing about aliens and black holes and shit? Was it like space metal or space country?
It was more like folk rock. He covered a bunch of classic songs, collaborated with artists like Ed Robertson from the Bare Naked Ladies, and even recorded a song with a high school choir back on Earth.
Wait, a high school choir? From space? That's kind of wholesome for a guy who flies fighter jets and hangs out with Russian cosmonauts. Was he trying to win over the teenage demographic, become the Justin Bieber of space?
I think it was more about sharing his love of music and space with as many people as possible. He saw music as a way to connect with people across cultures and generations. And let's be honest, it's pretty damn cool to record an album in space.
Okay, I gotta admit, that's pretty badass. But you know what's even more badass? His cover of Space Oddity by David Bowie. You've seen that video, right? The one where he's floating around the ISS, singing his heart out with Earth in the background.
Oh yeah, that video went viral. It was a cultural phenomenon. Even David Bowie himself praised it, calling it the most poignant version of the song he'd ever heard.
Talk about a mic drop moment. Bowie giving you props from beyond the grave. That's got to be the ultimate validation for a spaceman who plays guitar. But let's be real, he could have just retired after that. Gone on tour with his space guitar. Made millions. Did he?
Nope. Retirement's not really in this guy's vocabulary. He came back to Earth, wrote a best-selling autobiography, became a professor at the University of Waterloo, and is now advising Virgin Galactic on their space tourism program. He's also a sought-after speaker, sharing his experiences and insights with audiences around the world.
So he's like the ultimate overachiever. From cornfields to commanding the space station, playing guitar with Bowie's blessing, and now shaping the future of space travel. Is there anything this guy hasn't done?
He hasn't been to Mars yet, but he said he'd go even if it was a one-way trip.
Holy shit, a one-way trip to Mars? That's some next-level commitment. What the hell drives this guy? Is he trying to escape Earth? Is he looking for aliens? Does he just really, really love freeze-dried food?
I think it's simpler than that. He's an explorer, a pioneer, someone who's driven by a deep curiosity and a desire to push the boundaries of human experience. He wants to see what's out there, to discover new worlds, to inspire others to reach for the stars.
He sounds like a real-life Captain Kirk, boldly going where no man has gone before. Except maybe with a guitar instead of a phaser. But all this talk about space travel and exploring new worlds, it kind of makes our problems down here on Earth seem pretty insignificant.
That's one of the things Hadfield often talks about, the overview effect. Astronauts who've seen Earth from space often describe a profound shift in perspective. They see our planet as a fragile oasis in the vastness of space, and they realize that our differences down here are pretty trivial in the grand scheme of things.
So maybe we all need to take a trip to space, get a little perspective on our tiny little planet. But for now, I guess we'll have to settle for listening to Chris Hadfield's stories and trying to learn a thing or two from his extraordinary life. What do you think is the biggest takeaway from all this?
I think it's about the power of setting ambitious goals and then relentlessly pursuing them. It's about embracing challenges, pushing boundaries, and never giving up on your dreams. And it's about remembering that even in the face of incredible adversity, it's possible to maintain a sense of humor and a deep appreciation for the wonders of the universe.
So what does all this mean for us regular schmucks stuck down here on Earth? Should we all be signing up for astronaut training and learning to play guitar in zero gravity?
Maybe not all of us are cut out for space travel, but I think Hadfield's story offers some valuable lessons for anyone you know, regardless of their career aspirations.
Like what? Don't be a lazy sack of shit and chase your goddamn dreams. That's pretty much the standard self-help bullshit, isn't it?
It's more than that. It's about being deliberate in your choices, seeking out challenges that push you outside your comfort zone, and cultivating a mindset of continuous learning and growth. Hadfield wasn't just lucky. He actively sought out opportunities to expand his skills and knowledge, whether it was learning to fly a new aircraft, mastering a foreign language, or figuring out how to play a guitar in microgravity.
Okay, I get it. Be more like Hadfield. But the guy's like a superhuman overachiever. It's kind of intimidating, Makes me feel like I'm just wasting my life scrolling through memes and watching cat videos.
You don't have to become an astronaut or a rock star to live a meaningful life. The point is to find what you're passionate about and pursue it with the same kind of focus and determination that Hadfield brings to everything he does.
All right, so maybe we can't all be Chris Hadfield, but maybe we can all be a little bit more badass in our own way. So what's the one thing you want our listeners to take away from this deep dive?
Remember that feeling you had as a kid when the world was full of possibilities and you believed you could achieve anything? Hadfield never lost that sense of wonder and possibility. He kept pushing boundaries, exploring new frontiers, and inspiring others along the way. That's a legacy worth celebrating, and maybe even emulating in our own small ways.
Damn, that's actually pretty profound for a guy who just spent an hour talking about a dude who plays guitar in space. So there you have it, folks. The life and times of Chris Hadfield, the astronaut who proves that sometimes reality is way more badass than fiction. Go check out his stuff. You won't regret it.